Hey guys, we are changing to a two-step testing process for C. diff ordering in order to reduce false positive tests. C. diff may be present in your colon as both a toxigenic and non-toxigenic variety, but only the toxigenic variety causes legitimate disease, i.e. colitis. We are currently using the C. diff PCR for the toxin gene to determine if someone has C. diff. The problem is that just because the gene is present, it doesn't mean it's actually being expressed, and this results in a lot of overdiagnosis, over-isolation, and over-treatment. Our two-step test first checks for a general marker of C. diff colonization, the GDH, and it's coupled with a test for the toxin itself. If they get discordant results, it reflexes to the C. diff PCR. But the focus with this new testing is really going back to the toxin. This is really the workhorse for the disease, and its presence should raise suspicion significantly for colitis. At our hospital, 84% of all C. diff tests are negative. That means we are over-ordering, and even of those that are positive, half had other causes of diarrhea that were eventually identified. So with the new two-stage testing, there will be 4 possible results reported after the 2 stages are completed. If it's positive, the patient has C. diff, they need to be isolated for 21 days and must be symptom-free before they've been removed from isolation. If it's negative, you can remove them from isolation. If it says it's likely colonized, then that means that the toxin was negative, but the PCR for the gene was positive. The patient should be isolated, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they need treatment. The toxin may be a false negative because it degrades over time, and it's of utmost importance that C. diff tests get sent to microbiology quickly in order to avoid false negatives. It's going to be up to the provider to determine if this group needs to be treated, but to be cautious and just in case the toxin may be a false negative, we recommend isolating all these patients as if they were toxin positive. If it says invalid, discuss with the provider and consider resending a sample. You should continue isolation if the clinical suspicion for C. diff remains high. Not all of these patients need repeat samples sent, and not all of these patients need isolation to be continued, so make sure that you talk with the practitioner to decide if the clinical suspicion of C. diff remains high. This algorithm should get results back faster and ultimately should decrease patients in enteric isolation. It's important to note that even with this new, more specific test, C. diff should only be ordered on patients that have greater than or equal to 3 loose bowel movements per day, and that other causes of diarrhea have been excluded, like laxatives, tube feeds, and the patient's underlying comorbidities. C. diff positivity in the first 3 days doesn't count against the hospital, so if someone comes in with a compatible syndrome, send C. diff early. So what do you absolutely need to know? Well, not a whole lot. Stop isolation with negative tests, really no changes in the specimens that should be sent. Don't test unless the patient has indications to test, and be aware of the likely colonized and invalid test results. Thanks for listening, and follow me on Twitter.